When people travel, common destinations include beaches, museums, castles, or mountains. Not often do you find people choosing a farm as their end goal. But we visited the Life Coffee Plantation in Monteverde, Costa Rica back in 2014, and it turned out to be a major highlight on our trip. Come learn all about this incredible eco-friendly coffee farm and coffee in general with me. We visited Costa Rica in November of 2014 with our daughter when she was 10 months old. She was a fabulous traveler and we were super pleased. I was, on the other hand, not such a great traveler as I was suffering from extreme morning sickness, being pregnant with our son at the time. But that's another story. Despite the multiple stops we had to make on our drive to the cloud forest, we did eventually make it to Monteverde and spent one day touring Salvatore Adventure Park. I had also booked another day trip to explore a real-life coffee farm, Life Monteverde Coffee Farm or Coffee Plantation. It was a green farm, so I was really interested in how they produced and maintained their product in such an environmentally sound fashion. A company van picked us up at our hotel and drove us out of town to the farm, which was located at the top of a relatively steep hill that provided a stunning view of the Monteverde valleys and slopes. My husband, daughter, and I were the only participants that morning, and it was nice having a private tour of the establishment.
So do you guys have, with the co-op, do you have classes and stuff you can learn, or do you just learn as you go, kind of, and both pass it down, both? Not that much with the co-op, but with the e-cafe, or the institute.
Apparently, we were there between busy times, as the company offers work experience semesters for local and foreign agriculture and environmental studies students. Our guide was a former environmental studies student who liked the green aspect of the farm and signed on to help increase its effectiveness. Our tour started in a mess hall type building, where we sat for a short slideshow depicting a brief history of farming and agriculture in the Monteverde region, naturally focusing on the coffee trade. I won't go into detail here, but it was interesting to hear how coffee plantations developed in the region. We didn't stay long here as our daughter was getting squirmy, and since no one else was there to object, our guide decided to just give us a casual walking tour of the farm and threw the formal tour guidelines to the wind.
If we do a lot of advertising in airports or stuff like that, but you compare Colombian and Costa Rica and you say, well, this one is better.
We wandered through the coffee fields, which featured a variety of older, more established plants growing among younger, smaller coffee plants. Every now and then, a lime or orange tree would tower above the coffee bushes. There were several distinct, separate fields, but my favorite was the one planted right on the steep hillside with a fantastic view of the valley. Our guide showed us the various stages of coffee bean maturity on the plant. Green beans were still immature and not ready for picking. Red or brown beans were ripe and ready to be harvested. We pulled a few red beans from the plants and our guide showed us how to skin them to find the coffee bean used for brewing inside. He explained that different coffee flavors come not only from roasting times, but also from how the bean is peeled. Some prefer an unpeeled bean. Some prefer coffee beans with the sticky, sweet middle membrane intact, called a mucilage, and some prefer a bean completely peeled and washed of the sweet membrane. He showed us how to scrape the bean of its outer layer to find the mucilage, and encouraged us to taste it. It was surprisingly sweet, and I was curious how this layer would affect the flavor of coffee. Our guide led us to one special field that was being used to test a particular blight that affected coffee plants. You could see which plants were infected as they had shriveled, yellowed leaves with pockmarks on them. Those beans were smaller and seemed dried out. The employees of the farm were open, friendly, welcoming, and very informative. The man harvesting the yucca was using the moon as his guide, harvesting during the waning moon as the plant's water content is affected by the pull of the moon's gravity. If harvesting during the waning moon, the roots last longer in storage, and the stems have more water present, so it's easier to grow a new plant from the unharvested portion. The farm also produced other plants, such as yucca, and sustained a small number of animals such as pigs and chickens. They used the animals for food and collected their waste for fertilizer. Even the pig's waste was useful. It was stored in a giant methane bag. From there, the methane gas was piped into the kitchen and used as gas for cooking. After learning about the farm and its environs, we were led to a building which stored the picked coffee beans and laid them out to dry. The building also acted as a greenhouse for coffee tree seedlings. There, our guide showed us several trays which demonstrated just how versatile one coffee bean can be. One tray held unpeeled beans, dried in the sun and ready to roast. Another tray held beans that had been peeled down to the sweet mucilage. One tray had dried beans that had been completely peeled. They all had distinctive appearances, and I knew that they would also inevitably have very different tastes. Finally, the farm portion of the tour ended back at the mess hall, and this time our friendly yucca harvester was waiting for us. He had plates piled with fried plantains for us to snack on. It was here I realized that cooking with methane made from pig's waste was probably not meant for my home. The yucca harvester demonstrated how to brew coffee in a traditional Costa Rican brewer called a correador. They can be made from wood or dried yucca stalks and a cloth filtration bag. It was a very slow, methodical brew process, but the coffee it made was thick and rich and delicious. But the tour wasn't over yet. Once we'd had our fill of coffee and plantains, the two men decided that instead of taking the giant tour van to the coffee mill, we'd all pile in their rickety farm truck so they could deliver some beans and kill two birds with one stone. The ride was extremely bumpy. I think it was Abby's favorite part. She laughed the entire ride, while I tried to keep from getting jostled right off the seat.
This is our bumpy ride to the coffee mill. Hi, baby.
The mill, Monteverde Coffee Lab, is not part of the Life Monteverde Coffee Farm. We learned that it is a separate, independently owned business that services all of the coffee farms in the area to act as their roaster. When we arrived, however, we were once again the only ones there and got special personalized treatment. The roast man was amazing. He was young, but so passionate about what he was doing, it was infectious. He knew his stuff. He didn't speak English. Our guide tried to translate everything, but we knew we were missing information because the roast master was going a mile a minute.
What we're going to see now is basic concepts of roasting, what defines, what are the criteria, what is he doing right now. This coffee has just roasted, just came out of the roast, it's right here. Okay.
We learned the difference between roasting a light roast, a medium roast, and a dark roast. The light and medium roasts are the most difficult to make because they require diligent attention on part of the roast master. He has to listen to the sounds of the beans as they roast and take them out after the first few pops before they get too dark.
See, the coffee first smells similar to flowers, very herbal. Afterwards, it starts getting yeasty, similar to wheat and seeds. As you keep roasting, more like almonds or peanuts. Then, when the roast actually starts, you get some toast or burnt bread. And the last part is the coffee that we know. Here? Yeah. Popcorn. And there's a lot of coffee there, so in a moment it's gonna...
Y va a empezar a soltar su última capita, ¿verdad?
And the last layer, the cap, starts to come out.
Can you do anything with that? The discard?
At this moment, we use it as compost.
Okay.
If you want to get closer, no worries.
Just don't let it fall. She's very curious about it. Very curious. She's very young. It's like 26. So I can't imagine.
He had the system down and roasted 2 batches of perfectly light roasted coffee while we watched, all without referring to his charts. But he charted every batch anyway. Of the dark roasts, he said dismissively, "Anyone can burn coffee beans." A true artist. It was quite fun watching the beans roast in the big metal vat. It was like a giant popcorn machine, and indeed, the beans sound like popcorn as they heat. Chaff gets puffed up into a vent by the heat and airflow inside the roaster, and what is left after the process are pure and delicious smelling beans.
It is man-made. We made this system. Normally, there will be another machine that has that. You will have to tilt this machine.
I enjoyed the open bags of beans in the back room of the coffee lab. I like to sink my hand deep inside the beans and feel their silkiness as I wiggled my fingers. After the last batch was roasted, the roast master took us to the front room and introduced us to the idea of cupping, or coffee tasting. The roast master took 5 different beans and had us first stir the coffee and smell the aroma, then taste the coffee to try and determine which roast and type of harvested bean the coffee was made from. I got 3 out of 5. My favorite coffee turned out to be the medium roast of the bean harvested with the mucilage membrane still attached. This roast is called a honey roast, and for good reason. It's sweetened by the membrane, but not so much that it tastes like someone just added a packet of sugar to the brew. The most surprising coffee was made from the unpeeled or natural bean. Because the coffee bean's casing is left intact, the coffee actually tastes much more plant-like and has a blackberry aftertaste. I highly recommend attending this coffee tour if you are in the Monteverde area. It's loaded with information about the region's history, biology, agriculture, and economics. You'll learn all about self-sustaining farm practices, harvesting rituals, and planting processes. You'll get a first-hand look at how coffee is roasted, and you might even get to help. And of course, you get to drink delicious, fresh coffee made locally and roasted before your own eyes. I hope you now feel like a coffee expert, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a big thumbs up. What's your favorite coffee fact? Let me know in the comments below. To anyone new to Down the Rabbit Hole, please consider subscribing to join my YouTube community and ring the bell to receive notifications whenever I post a new video. Now I'm off to brew a cup for myself.